single guy on the panel sounded angry and frustrated and laid out some scenario for the Celtics to get back in the game. And the Celtics, they got to do this. And I'll tell you this, they got to do that.
Even
and I'll tell you
huh?
this, they got to do this and that. And they didn't do this, and they didn't do everything that was said at halftime of Game 6. You would have thought you're listening to the Boston Celtics television network. You would have thought that you stumbled into a Celtic broadcast. Why? Because every single guy on the panel spoke at halftime with anger and frustration, and it all was directed towards the Celtics and what they're quote-unquote not doing. And instead of looking at the Warriors as the champions that they are, they've already got 3 rings. Now the same group's going to have 4, and talking about how incredible and how stunning this incredible turnaround was in the first half, and crediting the team that's obviously walking towards a title. Instead, they showed us their ass by basically showing us that they cared more about the Celtics and that they were somehow frustrated that the Celtics were out and that what the Celtics had to do, and the damn Stephen A. Smith was getting ready to bury the Celtics, and Jalen Rose was telling they better do this, and Michael Wilbon, they better do that. It was all like they were just rah Celtics, like everything in their entire perspective was tied to not what the Warriors were doing, but what the Celtics were not doing. Not what the Warriors were on the verge of doing. It was what the Celtics were on the verge of, in their mind, coughing up. It was so blatantly their position, and what they actually cared about was so on display right there. Did you guys tape Game 6?
Yeah, I didn't, but
Go watch halftime later. When
I do remember the halftime, and I would say this: Stephen A. was probably ticked because he picked the Warriors to win from the start, but he picked the Celtics to win in Game 6. He almost changed his mind because he thought the Warriors might finish him off. So he was probably ticked that he didn't get his Game 7 prediction right. He's already on record saying the Warriors will win it again next year. So
yeah, I mean, and that's great, and we'll get into that too. I mean, I don't know who you guys consider the number one contender. You know, if the Warriors are the champ, who's the number one contender in the NBA going into next year? I definitely want your thoughts on that. But I mean, seriously, where's the objectivity? You're supposed to be a national broadcast. You're not supposed to be Boston Celtics television. And here's Game 6, and the Warriors are on the verge of slapping this team around for the 3rd night in a row. That team has never won jack shit. This team's won 3 titles, and you can't even pause off of your Boston Celtic, you know, speaking point to acknowledge the dynasty that's right in front of your nose. I mean, I sat there and was laughing. I'm going, you know what? This is where they showed everybody where they're truly coming from, because guess what? They're not thinking about objectivity or professionalism. They're in the moment. They just watched Warriors Celtics Game 6 first half, and they've got to make sense of it, and they've got to have some commentary. But instead of just, you know, wrapping themselves in the obvious victor and saying, wow, we're seeing a coronation of greatness, and give Draymond his and give Kerr and Steph and Clay and, you know, give these guys some love. Instead, it's like Northeast, you know, sports talk 101, hyper negative, highlight the negative. Well, it's not what the Warriors, nobody ever wins. It's like, you know, everybody loses. Oh, this team lost to that team and this team lost to that team. How about one of those teams won? Why don't we celebrate the team that's winning instead of just blaming the team that's losing for what? For being second best? I mean,
Mark Graves.
What are we doing here, guys?